The encounter with the unknown. The stars hung like diamonds in the vastness of space, glittering against the endless black void. Jack Monroe leaned against the console of his ship, the sable horizon, his eyes transfixed by the twinkling lights of distant galaxies. Space had always fascinated him, but now, as he was actually living his dream of exploring the stars, it felt different, more profound. He wasn't alone. 3 alien women, each with their own secrets and powers, were aboard with him. They had saved him once, gifted him a strange power, enhanced perception, and now they were on a mission he could not fully comprehend. LRA, the leader of the group, stood beside him, her silver-blue skin shimmering under the ship's dim lights. Her glowing eyes studied the stars as well, but there was a calm in her gaze. "You're quiet, Jack," she said, her voice melodic, cutting through the silence. Jack turned to her, a faint smile pulling at his lips. "Just thinking. It's a lot to take in." LRA nodded, her gaze never leaving the stars. "I understand. This is no ordinary journey. But remember, you're not alone. We're in this together." There was a comfort in her words, but Jack still felt the weight of uncertainty. They had received a distress signal from a distant planet, a planet no one had visited in centuries. Whatever lay ahead, Jack knew it would test not just his newfound abilities, but his very humanity. "What exactly are we headed for?" Jack asked, shifting the conversation to something more concrete. LRA's face grew serious. "We're headed to the edge of known space, to a planet that's been sending a distress signal for weeks. We don't know what we'll find there, but we have to investigate. It could be an ancient civilization, or something much worse." Jack's heart raced. The idea of encountering an ancient civilization was exciting, but also terrifying. "This is gonna be incredible," he murmured. LRA's expression darkened. "It could also be dangerous. That's why we need you. Your gift might help us understand what's really going on there. You might see things we can't." The ship hummed with the vibrations of its engines as Jack leaned back, trying to quell the excitement bubbling inside him. His enhanced perception had already allowed him to see things more clearly than ever before, but this was something else. He was about to venture into the unknown, and who knew what he would discover. Hours later, as the ship exited hyperspace, the planet came into view. The surface was dark, covered in rocky terrain and jagged mountains, with no sign of life. Storm clouds swirled above, lightning flashing in the distance, casting an eerie glow over the landscape. "This place doesn't exactly scream welcome," Jack muttered under his breath as the ship descended. "No," LRA said, her eyes narrowing as she studied the surface. "But the signal is coming from down there, near those mountains." The ship touched down on a flat stretch of land near the base of the mountains. The atmosphere outside was thick with sulfur, and the air felt unnervingly stale. Jack adjusted the breathing apparatus LRA had given him, trying to shake the unsettling feeling crawling up his spine. The ramp descended with a soft hiss, and the 4 of them stepped out into the bleak environment. The land stretched out before them, black sand, rocky outcroppings, and a complete absence of life. The air was oppressive, filled with the distant rumble of thunder. "This place feels wrong," Celine, one of the other alien women, muttered, scanning the mountains ahead. LRA consulted a device in her hand. "The signal is stronger here. It's coming from somewhere within those mountains." Jack's enhanced perception kicked in, and he paused, his senses tingling. There was something else, something faint but disturbing. Whispers. Disjointed voices drifting on the wind, like echoes from another time. "Do you hear that?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The others stopped, listening intently. Mara, the third member of the group, shook her head. "I don't hear anything," she said, her brow furrowed. "It's faint," Jack insisted, his eyes scanning the horizon. "Like whispers, voices from the past." Lara glanced at Mara and Celine, a flicker of concern crossing her face. Jack's gift is picking up something we can't hear. Stay alert. They moved toward the mountains, the whispers growing louder, more distinct. Jack's mind raced to interpret the voices. There was something ancient here, something old, something desperate. As they entered a narrow pass between two towering cliffs, the signal pulsed with an unnatural rhythm. Jack's senses were overwhelmed as the voices grew louder in his mind, urging him to turn back, warning him of something terrible waiting ahead. Finally, they emerged into a vast, open area, a natural amphitheater surrounded by towering rock formations. In the center of the space stood a massive, metallic structure. It was ancient, its surface covered in strange symbols that faintly glowed, pulsing with an eerie light. "This is it," Lara said, her voice a whisper, as if the structure itself demanded reverence. Jack stepped forward, drawn to the structure. As his hand touched the cold metal, a surge of images and emotions flooded his mind. He saw the final days of a long-forgotten civilization, its people struggling to contain a powerful force that was spiraling out of control. Fear, panic, and the frantic effort to seal something away that could no longer be controlled. They were trying to contain something, Jack whispered, his voice trembling with the weight of what he was experiencing. Something powerful. Something dangerous. Lra's expression grew grim. What kind of force could destroy an entire civilization? Before Jack could answer, the ground rumbled beneath them. The structure began to hum, the symbols glowing brighter. The air crackled with energy. "We need to leave, now," Mara shouted, backing away from the structure. But the ground shook violently, and the pass they had come through collapsed, trapping them in the amphitheater. The structure pulsed with blinding light, and a deafening roar filled the air as the ancient seals that had contained the dark force began to break. Jack's mind raced as the sheer malevolence of the energy washed over him. It was a presence unlike anything he had ever felt, a deep, consuming darkness that threatened to destroy them all. "Lra!" Jack shouted, panic rising in his chest. "We need to stop this." Lra's eyes widened in realization. "Jack, focus on the source. Use your gift." With every ounce of strength, Jack focused his mind on the heart of the structure, trying to connect with the dark force. It was like staring into the abyss, an overwhelming mass of anger, hate, and despair that refused to be contained. But Jack fought back, reaching deep into the core of the power, trying to force it back into its prison. For what felt like an eternity, Jack struggled with the energy, his mind battered by the force's resistance. But slowly, gradually, the dark energy began to recede, the blinding light dimming. The rumbling of the ground subsided, and the air grew still. With one final, desperate push, Jack sealed the force back into its prison. The amphitheater fell silent, the only sound the heavy breathing of the group, each of them processing the near-death experience. Jack collapsed to his knees, his body trembling with exhaustion. "It's over," he gasped. Lra rushed to his side, her expression a mix of relief and concern. "You did it, Jack. You saved us." Mara and Celine joined them, their faces pale but relieved. "That was too close," Mara said, her voice shaky. Celine nodded. "Whatever that thing was, it was powerful. We're lucky to be alive." Jack looked at the structure one last time, his mind still reeling from the experience. "They knew what they were doing when they sealed it away," he said, his voice low. "We can't let this happen again." Lra helped him to his feet, her touch reassuring. "We'll make sure of it. But for now, we need to leave." As they made their way back to the ship, the weight of their encounter hung heavily in the air. Jack had faced something ancient and powerful, something that had almost destroyed them all. And yet, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. There were greater dangers ahead, and they would need every ounce of strength, courage, and ingenuity to face whatever the universe threw at them next. The sable horizon lifted off, leaving the desolate planet behind. Jack gazed out at the stars, his mind filled with thoughts of the challenges yet to come. They had survived this ordeal, but there would be more. And he knew, deep down, that their journey into the unknown was only just beginning. The ship hummed softly as it accelerated into the blackness of space. The sable horizon was on its way back to known space, leaving behind the haunted planet and the dark force they had sealed away. But Jack couldn't shake the feeling of dread that lingered in his mind. They had just scraped through an ancient danger, but something about the whole experience felt like a warning, like they had only scratched the surface of a much larger and darker mystery. LRA, sensing his unease, approached him in the ship's dimly lit common area. "You're still thinking about it," she said, her voice gentle, almost understanding. Jack didn't look up at first. Instead, he stared out the viewport, watching the stars streak by. "I can't stop. That thing we faced, what was it? What was it trying to break free from?" LRA took a seat beside him, her silver blue skin glowing faintly in the dim light. "We don't know. Whatever it was older than any civilization we've encountered. Even our people's records don't mention anything like it." Jack clenched his fists, the memory of the crushing malevolence they had barely escaped from still fresh in his mind. If it was so old, how come we haven't found traces of it before? Why is it still a threat? "Some things are meant to be forgotten," LRA replied quietly. "Perhaps the civilizations that came before us sealed away their greatest mistakes and hoped the universe would forget." Jack wasn't sure if that explanation was comforting or terrifying. He leaned back in his seat, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing down on him. Just then, Mara and Celine entered the room, their expressions grim. Mara's sharp features were furrowed with concern, while Celine's silver skin reflected the ship's light in an almost ethereal way, but her eyes were wide with unspoken questions. "We need to talk," Mara said, her voice tense. LRA turned to face her. "About what?" "That planet we just left, there's something we're missing. The structure we found, the one Jack interacted with, it's not just a relic. It's a key. A key to something much larger," Mara said. Jack's pulse quickened. "A key to what?" Celine spoke up, her voice calm but with a hint of urgency. "We don't know for sure, but we've been digging through old records, and this kind of thing has happened before. There are legends, myths even, about an ancient race that once controlled unimaginable power. But something went wrong. They built these structures across the galaxy to keep that power contained. It was their last line of defense." LRA's brow furrowed. "And what happened to them?" "They vanished." "Completely," Mara answered. "But their legacy, these structures, are still here. And now, they're starting to wake up." Jack felt a shiver run through him. "So that thing we sealed away, it wasn't an isolated incident?" "No," Celine said quietly. "It's a warning. There are more of these structures out there. And we don't know what will happen if they all wake up at once." Jack stood abruptly, his mind racing. The idea of more of these ancient forces that could erase entire civilizations, was terrifying. The thought of facing them without knowing their true power felt like walking into an invisible storm. "Do you think anyone else knows about these structures?" Jack asked, his voice low. "We don't think so," LRA replied. "At least, not in the way we do. Our people have never found anything like it. We've explored much of the galaxy, but these ancient powers have been hidden away, buried in time. And if they all start to awaken?" Jack asked, turning to look at each of them in turn. "There's no telling what could happen," Mara said, her eyes darkening. "The legends say that when all the structures align, when all their seals break, an unimaginable force will be unleashed. It could destroy everything in its path." Jack swallowed hard, the weight of her words settling over him like a stone. The situation was far worse than he'd realized. It wasn't just about one planet, one ancient power. It was about a galaxy-spanning mystery, one that could threaten every living thing in the universe. "So what now?" he asked, trying to steady his voice. "Do we just wait for this to happen?" "No," LRA said firmly. "We need to find the other structures. We need to understand them, before it's too late." Jack nodded slowly, a sense of determination settling over him. This wasn't just some strange relic they had discovered. This was bigger than anything he had ever imagined. And if there was one thing Jack had learned about the universe, it was that humanity was always at its best when it was up against the impossible. "We need to find out everything we can," Jack said, his voice steady now. "And we need to do it fast." LRA's eyes met his, and there was something in her gaze, something that felt like trust. "We're not alone in this, Jack. We'll face whatever comes next together." But even as she said the words, Jack knew that the journey ahead was going to be more perilous than any of them could prepare for. These ancient structures, these forgotten forces, were just the beginning. There were more questions than answers, more dangers lurking in the dark corners of space, and every moment they waited brought the universe one step closer to waking the forces that had been sealed away for eons. As the ship sailed deeper into the unknown reaches of space, Jack stared out into the endless void. There were more mysteries waiting to be uncovered, and more dangers to face. But one thing was certain: humanity's strength, its resilience, and its ingenuity would be tested in ways they could never have anticipated. And Jack Monroe would be at the heart of it all. Days passed as the sable horizon drifted through the emptiness of space, its sleek hull cutting through the void toward the next unknown. Jack Monroe found himself wrestling with the weight of the knowledge they had uncovered. Each new revelation about the ancient structures and their hidden powers only deepened the mystery, and the danger. He spent hours pacing the ship, his thoughts consumed by what Mara and Celine had said. The idea of more of these ancient structures scattered across the galaxy felt like an invisible storm, one that might strike at any moment, and they would be powerless to stop it. LRA was often by his side, helping him process the growing sense of unease. Her presence was calming, like the steady hum of the ship, but Jack could see the strain behind her glowing eyes. She was the leader of her people, but even she was shaken by what they had encountered. "Jack," she said one evening, as they sat together in the ship's common area, "I know this isn't easy. The unknown is always harder when you have no answers. But I've seen what humanity can do when faced with impossible odds. You have a gift. A rare one. And we need that if we're going to stop whatever is coming." Jack turned to her, his expression serious. "But what if it's not enough? What if the structures are too powerful, too dangerous? We don't even know what we're dealing with. The legends don't tell us enough." LRA nodded thoughtfully. "We know more than we did before. The force we sealed away on that planet wasn't just a weapon, it was a key, a beacon. Whatever was inside that structure wanted to reach out, to spread. And now that we've stopped it, we've drawn attention. We need to understand what's causing this, what's driving it." Jack looked down at his hands, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He had always dreamed of adventure, of exploring the stars, but this was something far darker than he had ever imagined. This wasn't about curiosity anymore, it was about survival. "I don't know if I'm the right person for this," Jack admitted. "I'm just a mechanic. I've fixed things. I've kept machines running. I've never dealt with this." LRA placed a hand on his arm, her grip firm. "You've already proven that you can handle the unexpected. You've saved us once. I believe you can do it again." Just then, Mara and Celine entered, their faces hard with determination. Mara's dark blue skin seemed almost to absorb the light, and Celine's silver hue shone brightly against the shadows. The air between them was tense, thick with unspoken words. "We've been monitoring the data from the planet we left," Mara said, her voice tight. There's something else out there. Something that we didn't detect before. Jack straightened in his seat. What do you mean? While we were focused on the structure, Mara continued, we missed something deeper beneath the surface of that planet. There are more structures. Not just on that world, but scattered across several others in the system. They're dormant, but they're not inactive. Celine's voice was low, almost a whisper. It's like they're waiting for something. And if we don't act quickly, they'll wake up. Jack felt a chill creep down his spine. The structures were connected. Not just to each other, but to something bigger. Something far more dangerous than he had realized. So, we're dealing with a whole network of these things? Jack asked. What happens when they all wake up? We don't know, Mara admitted. But based on what we've seen so far, it could be catastrophic. These ancient civilizations, whoever they were, they didn't just create technology. They created containment systems. And those systems are starting to fail. Jack's mind raced, processing the information. So, what do we do now? Do we just go after these structures, one by one? LRA stood, her face set with resolve. We can't wait for them to awaken completely. If we're going to stop this, we need to take control of the situation. First, we need to identify all the known structures. After that, we'll figure out how to contain them. We can't just destroy them, that would be too dangerous. We need to find a way to lock them away again, like we did on that planet. Jack nodded, his sense of urgency growing. So, we track them down and figure out how to shut them down before they do more damage? Exactly, LRA said. But it won't be easy. We don't even know where all of them are, and the ones we do know about are hidden in remote parts of the galaxy, places that are difficult to reach. The universe is vast, and we're going to need every bit of knowledge, every bit of strength, to get through it. The ship's systems beeped, signaling an incoming transmission. Everyone turned to the screen as it flickered to life. It was a communication from the leader of a nearby space station. Captain LRA, the voice crackled, we've detected an anomaly in your sector. A large energy signature, possibly linked to the structures you've encountered. We recommend caution. Whatever it is, it's growing stronger. LRA's face darkened. How far are we from the anomaly? Less than a day's travel, the voice responded. But we've lost all communication with the station. We don't know what's happening, but we think the anomaly is affecting the system. Mara exchanged a quick glance with Celine. Another one, she muttered. LRA's eyes met Jack's, and for a moment, there was a flicker of something, recognition, perhaps, or an unspoken understanding. The stakes had just grown higher. There were more forces at play than they had realized. We're going to investigate, LRA said, her voice resolute. Prepare yourselves. This is it, this is where it begins. As the sable horizon veered toward the energy signature, the crew braced themselves for what awaited them. Jack's heart raced as he stared into the void. He didn't know what they were about to face, but one thing was clear. Humanity had just stepped onto a path that led deep into the unknown, a path that could either save them or destroy everything they held dear. The sable horizon glided through the darkness, its engines humming steadily as it approached the anomaly. Jack Monroe stood in the ship's command center, his gaze fixed on the screen as the distant energy signature grew clearer. The station, once a bustling hub of activity, now loomed ominously on the edge of the display. It had gone dark, silent, as if swallowed by some unseen force. LRA, Mara, and Celine were gathered around him, their expressions unreadable. Each of them understood the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just another mission, it was a confrontation with the unknown, a challenge that could change the fate of entire civilizations. We'll have to approach cautiously, LRA said, her voice steady but tinged with concern. Whatever caused this anomaly has a presence. We don't know if it's a natural event, or if something is actively manipulating the station. Jack couldn't help but feel the weight of her words. The idea of facing an unknown enemy, something that could disrupt their communications and warp the very fabric of reality, was terrifying. But he had no choice. He had already seen the destructive potential of these ancient forces, and this anomaly felt like just the beginning of something far worse. The station came into clearer view on the screen, a massive structure that once stood as a symbol of progress, now reduced to a hulking, silent shell. It floated in the cold expanse of space like a forgotten relic, its surface pocked with the scars of age and neglect. Flashes of erratic energy crackled around it, the signature they had detected pulsating like a heartbeat. Jack's enhanced perception picked up something else, too. A faint, rhythmic vibration in the air, like the hum of a distant engine. "I'm not sure I like this," Mara muttered, her eyes narrowing at the screen. "Whatever happened here, it's not natural. It's like the station is reacting to something." Jack nodded, feeling the tension rise in the pit of his stomach. He had fixed machines, solved technical problems, but this? This was different. The universe was vast, and they had only just begun to scratch the surface of its mysteries. What they were up against now wasn't a malfunction. It was something alive. LRA turned to the crew. "We need to dock with the station and investigate. Prepare your suits and gear. We'll need to be ready for anything." As the crew gathered their equipment, Jack felt a sense of purpose flood through him. The danger was undeniable, but so was the opportunity. The key to understanding these ancient forces lay somewhere in the heart of the anomaly. If they could uncover what was happening here, they might gain an advantage in the battle to stop the spread of these destructive forces. The ship began its slow approach to the station, maneuvering around the erratic bursts of energy that surrounded it. The eerie silence of space was broken only by the hum of the Sable Horizon's engines and the crackling of static from the communications array. Jack's mind raced as he tried to prepare for what was to come. This mission felt different. More urgent. He could feel it in the air, the growing sense that they were walking into something far more dangerous than anything they had faced so far. Once they docked, the airlock hissed open, and the team stepped into the station. The interior was just as desolate as the outside, with flickering lights casting long shadows across the metallic floors. The walls were lined with corridors that stretched out into the darkness, some of them twisted and warped, as if the space itself had been distorted by the energy field. Jack's enhanced perception immediately picked up on the subtle shifts in the atmosphere, the change in temperature, the faint, pulsing energy that seemed to be everywhere, but nowhere at the same time. LRA motioned for the team to spread out, her voice low but commanding. "Stay sharp. We don't know what we're dealing with." They moved through the station in silence, their footsteps echoing in the vast emptiness. Jack's breath came in shallow bursts as he tried to process the strange sensations flooding his mind. The energy around him seemed to warp the very air, bending reality in subtle ways. He could almost hear whispers again, faint murmurs that brushed against his consciousness but vanished before he could fully understand them. It was the same sensation he had felt on the planet, only now it was stronger, more intense. As they reached the central hub of the station, the energy signature grew stronger, its pulse quickening. A massive control room lay ahead, its windows shattered, its equipment covered in dust. The screens were dark, their usual readings replaced by static and random bursts of interference. Jack stepped forward, examining the room. A large central console stood at the far end, its once glowing panels now flickering with a dim, almost unnatural light. "I've never seen anything like this," Celine muttered, her silver skin glowing faintly in the darkened room. "This place feels like it's been corrupted by something." Jack approached the console, his fingers brushing the surface of the broken control panel. As he made contact, a jolt of energy surged through him, and his vision blurred. He saw flashes, images of the station before it had gone dark, scenes of frantic activity and people running through the corridors, all chased by an unseen, incomprehensible force. He could feel their fear, their desperation. And then, as suddenly as it had started, the vision ended. Jack stumbled back, his head spinning. His mind was reeling from the overwhelming sensation, but his body was telling him something else, something was trying to reach him. The whispers he had heard before were growing louder now, more insistent. He could feel their presence, pressing against the walls of his mind. What the hell was that? Mara asked, her voice sharp with concern. I saw something, Jack said, his voice shaky. There was a force, an intelligence, maybe, inside this station. It's alive, I think. Whatever happened here, it's not just some malfunction. It's as if the station itself is a conduit. It's connected to whatever is causing the anomaly. LRA's face darkened as she turned to the rest of the team. We've awakened it. The walls trembled slightly, and a deep hum began to resonate from the core of the station. Jack felt the power surge again, this time with a different intensity. The whispers were no longer whispers, they were voices, screaming, crying out. The station seemed to come alive around them, the very structure shifting as if responding to their presence. We need to leave. Now! Mara shouted. But it was too late. The energy around them began to crackle violently, and the station's lights flickered and dimmed. A high-pitched sound filled the air, growing louder and more deafening by the second. The very walls seemed to pulse and convulse with energy, as if the station itself was trying to expel them. The control room began to collapse in on itself, and Jack barely had time to grab LRA's arm and pull her toward the exit. Run, he shouted. The station shook violently as they sprinted back through the corridors, the very air growing thicker, more oppressive. The walls twisted and writhed, and Jack could feel the energy surging beneath his feet. He was starting to lose track of time, of reality. The station was breaking down, collapsing in on itself as if it were being consumed by the energy they had inadvertently awakened. They reached the airlock, but the door wouldn't open. Panic gripped Jack's chest as he tried to override the controls, but the system was malfunctioning. The energy from the station had reached its peak, and everything was out of control. Jack, help! LRA screamed, her voice desperate. In that moment, Jack knew that they had only just begun to face the true extent of the dangers hidden in the stars. And this time, there might be no escape. The pressure in the airlock intensified, the walls trembling with the force of the station's instability. Jack's mind raced as he frantically worked to override the controls. The high-pitched hum from the station's core was deafening now, and every heartbeat felt like a countdown. Time was running out. Come on, come on. Jack muttered, his fingers flying over the panel, desperate to find a solution. He could feel the energy of the station pressing in from all sides, the very air around him thick with an electric charge. The walls seemed to warp in and out of focus, like the entire structure was bending under the strain of an unseen force. Jack, we don't have time. Mara shouted, her voice edged with panic. Her eyes flicked between the flickering control panel and the hallway behind them. The station was shaking harder now, and there were loud, rumbling sounds coming from deeper within the station, like the foundation was splitting apart. We need to get out of here. Celine added, her usually calm demeanor cracking. This station is falling apart. Jack slammed his palm against the control panel, frustration mounting. The airlock door refused to budge. He could feel the walls shaking as if the station was alive and trying to push them out. He had to think, had to focus. His mind raced through the possibilities, but everything felt like it was slipping away. A low rumbling sound filled the corridor, and suddenly, the station's lights went out. Darkness swallowed them whole. Jack! LRA's voice pierced through the blackness, sharp with urgency. Do you have any other ideas? Jack's mind cleared in the silence, the panic of the moment pushing him to focus. He closed his eyes, reaching out with his enhanced perception, trying to connect to the force that was now swirling around them. The whispers, the voices, the presence in the station, it was all coming together in his mind. Whatever was here, whatever had caused this anomaly, it was reaching for them, trying to draw them deeper into its power. He could feel it now, like a vast, dark ocean beneath his feet. The station itself was connected to something far greater, a cosmic force that had been waiting for centuries. The energy signatures, the distortion in space, they weren't just natural anomalies. They were the remnants of an ancient, malevolent intelligence. And it was using the station as a conduit to reach out. Jack opened his eyes, focusing on the door again. This time, he reached beyond the physical mechanisms of the airlock. He reached into the fabric of the station, extending his perception like a ripple across the darkness. The energy was chaotic, but there was a pattern to it, a pulse, like a heartbeat, centered deep within the station. The station itself was alive in a way Jack had never felt before, a massive, dormant intelligence trying to awaken. His perception allowed him to sense the threads of energy that connected the station to whatever dark power lay at its core. The door wasn't just locked, it was sealed by the same force that had taken control of the station. With a deep breath, Jack focused all his energy on the door's control systems. He could feel the power of the anomaly coursing through the ship's circuits, warping them, twisting them. But he wasn't alone. LRA's steady presence, the silent support of Mara and Celine, and his own burning willpower combined in that moment. The light flickered back to life as the control panel hummed, responding to Jack's efforts. Slowly, agonizingly, the door began to open. The airlock hissed, the metal groaning as it parted. "Go! Go! Go!" Jack yelled, his voice ragged with exhaustion. The team didn't hesitate. They ran through the airlock and back into the sable horizon, the heavy door sealing behind them with a loud clang. The ship's engines roared to life, and the sable horizon shot away from the station, fleeing the collapsing station behind them. But Jack didn't feel the rush of relief. His mind was still tethered to the station, still connected to the strange, malignant force that had nearly consumed them all. As the ship cleared the immediate danger zone, Jack took a deep breath, wiping the sweat from his brow. "We did it," Mara said, though her voice was hollow, as though she, too, knew it wasn't over. "We made it out. But, we're not safe, are we?" Jack turned to face her. His eyes were filled with a sense of dread, but also a determination that had only grown stronger since they had encountered the force on the ancient planet. "No, we're not safe. Whatever that thing was, it's still out there. And it's just the beginning." LRA, who had been quietly observing Jack, stepped forward. "You were connected to it, Jack. You felt it, didn't you? That thing was using the station to reach us. And it's not just here. This power is older than we realize." Celine nodded, her silver skin reflecting the dim light. "We're dealing with something far worse than we thought. It's not just an anomaly. It's a force. A presence. And it has been waiting for centuries." Jack's mind swirled with the information, the growing realization of what they were facing. This was no longer a simple mission of exploration. They had stumbled upon something far more dangerous, something that had been lying dormant, waiting to be unleashed. The very fabric of the universe was being twisted by this force, and they had barely scratched the surface. "We need to find out more," Jack said, his voice filled with resolve. "This is bigger than any of us. But we can't run. We need to understand what this is, before it's too late." The rest of the crew exchanged tense glances. They all knew the stakes had changed. The universe was vast, and they were no longer just explorers. They were players in a game much larger than they had ever imagined. The sable horizon continued its journey through the stars, leaving behind the destroyed station. But Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The dark intelligence was out there, still connected to the station, still waiting for its chance to strike. They had only just begun to understand the true depth of the dangers that lurked in the depths of space. The sable horizon drifted silently through the void of space, its engines humming steadily as it moved farther from the shattered remnants of the station. The stars outside seemed distant, their brilliance overshadowed by the sense of foreboding that hung in the air. Inside the ship, a heavy silence enveloped the crew, each lost in their thoughts, processing the horrors they had just witnessed. Jack stood by the viewport, staring into the infinite expanse of space. His mind was reeling from the events on the station, the dark energy that had nearly consumed them. He could still feel its presence lingering, like a shadow over his consciousness, whispering to him in the depths of his mind. LRA approached him, her silver-blue skin glowing faintly in the dim light of the ship. Her footsteps were soundless as she moved to his side, her presence as calming as ever. Jack didn't turn to face her immediately, but he felt her there, her steady gaze watching him. "You're still thinking about it," LRA said softly, her voice a gentle reminder of the weight they all carried. "About what you felt on that station. You're not the only one." Jack nodded, his gaze fixed on the distant stars. "I can't shake the feeling that it's not over. That whatever that thing was, it's still out there. And it's only a matter of time before it finds us again." LRA remained quiet for a moment, then spoke again, her voice filled with a quiet strength. "We're not alone in this. You said it yourself, we have to understand what it is before it destroys us all. We're in this together, Jack." Her words were a balm to his anxious thoughts, but the truth remained, they were all in uncharted waters, facing something that had no clear answers. Jack couldn't ignore the feeling that their survival had been nothing more than luck. Luck, and his strange gift. As Jack turned away from the viewport, Mara and Celine entered the common area, their faces still marked by the tension of their recent escape. Mara's dark blue skin had an almost stormy look, the sharp angles of her features tense with the same unease that filled Jack's chest. Celine, though usually calm and composed, couldn't hide the flicker of uncertainty in her silver eyes. "We're moving too fast," Mara said abruptly, her voice blunt and to the point. "We don't know enough about what we're up against. We can't just keep running." "I agree," Celine added, her gaze flicking to Jack. "Whatever it was, it's not just something we can outrun. If we don't understand it, it will find a way to find us." Jack met their eyes, feeling the weight of their words settle on his shoulders. He had no intention of running, not anymore. The universe was too vast, too mysterious, for them to hide from the unknown. They had to confront it head-on, even if the cost was greater than any of them could predict. "We need to find out what it is. Whatever it was that nearly destroyed that station, whatever that dark power was. We need answers," Jack said, his voice firm with the resolve that had taken root in him. "And I think I know where to start." The others exchanged puzzled glances. "Where?" LRA asked, raising an eyebrow. "That distress signal we found earlier," Jack continued. "It wasn't a random transmission. It was deliberate. That civilization, whatever happened to them, it's connected to this force. We need to go back to the source of that signal. It's the only lead we have." Mara frowned, her expression skeptical. "The planet? The one with the mountains? Are you serious? After what we just went through, you want to go back there?" "We don't have a choice," Jack replied, his voice low but steady. "If we want to understand this thing, if we want to stop it before it destroys everything, we need to follow the trail. There's something there, something that could explain what we're dealing with." Celine looked at the others, her expression thoughtful. "He's right. The signal came from there. If we're going to stop this, we need to understand what happened. We need to find out what caused that thing to awaken." LRA, who had been silent for a moment, finally nodded. "I agree. We can't afford to keep running. Whatever is out there, it's not just going to disappear. We have to face it head-on. The decision was made. With the sable horizon recalibrating its course, the crew prepared for the journey back to the planet they had just left behind. The void of space stretched out before them, vast and uncharted. Every turn, every decision could bring them closer to the answers they needed, or lead them deeper into the unknown. As the ship hurtled toward the planet's orbit once again, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. They had come face to face with a dark force unlike any they had ever imagined. And now, they were heading straight toward the heart of it. The descent into the planet's atmosphere was smoother this time, but Jack could feel the tension building as the ship approached the desolate surface. The planet had felt oppressive before, the heavy atmosphere laden with the smell of sulfur and something ancient. But now, there was a palpable sense of unease, as if the very air was watching them. "This place is even more oppressive now," Mara muttered, her eyes scanning the surface as they descended. "It feels wrong." Jack nodded but didn't respond. He could feel it too. The planet was alive with an ancient energy, one that pulsed beneath the surface, waiting to awaken again. They were heading toward the mountains once more, toward the source of the signal, but Jack knew this time would be different. They would not be walking into the unknown with the naive optimism they had once had. Now, they were heading straight into a maelstrom of power and danger. The ship touched down once more, its landing gear sinking into the black sand with a soft hiss. The ramp lowered, and the crew stepped out, this time with a greater sense of urgency, their weapons ready and their minds focused. They weren't just here to explore, they were here to confront the darkness that had been unleashed. As they moved toward the base of the mountains, Jack could feel the energy in the air grow thicker, the whispers growing louder in his mind. He tried to focus, to push them out, but the voices refused to be silenced. "We're not alone," Jack said quietly, his voice a whisper in the wind. "It's here. And it's waiting." The others exchanged uneasy glances, their hands tightening around their weapons. "We need to move quickly," LRA said, her voice sharp with command. "Stay alert. Whatever this is, we're not walking into it unprepared." They moved as one, the path ahead shrouded in mystery. Jack's mind was filled with the knowledge that they were nearing the heart of something ancient, something powerful. And whatever it was about to reveal its true nature. The mountains loomed ahead like jagged teeth, their peaks hidden in the swirling clouds of dust and storm. The oppressive air seemed to thicken as they approached, and Jack could feel the whispers in his mind grow louder with each step. It was as though the planet itself was trying to communicate with them, trying to warn them, or perhaps, it was pulling them towards something darker. The crew marched forward, the sound of their boots crunching against the black sand the only noise in the otherwise eerie silence. Jack's heart pounded in his chest, the feeling of dread growing stronger with every passing moment. He didn't need to be a genius to know that they were heading straight for the heart of whatever had unleashed that dark force at the station. As they reached the base of the mountains, the ground began to rumble, just like it had on the station. The force was building, and Jack could feel it in his bones. Whatever had been sealed away on this planet was waking up. It was angry, and it was hungry. LRA motioned for them to stop. "Stay close. We don't know what's waiting for us up there." The narrow pass between the cliffs stretched before them, the dark energy palpable in the air. Jack's perception tingled, as if a million invisible threads were tugging at his mind. He closed his eyes for a moment, trying to focus, trying to block out the voices that were beginning to echo louder in his mind. "It's getting harder to concentrate," he muttered. "The voices, they're everywhere." Celine, her eyes scanning the surroundings, nodded gravely. "It's like the entire mountain is alive. This place, it feels like a tomb." Mara's hand rested on the hilt of her weapon, her stance ready for a fight. "We keep moving. We can't afford to waste time." They continued through the pass, the walls of rock narrowing as they went deeper into the heart of the mountain. The path twisted and turned, leading them toward a cavernous opening ahead. The signal was stronger now, pulsing like a heartbeat, thumping in rhythm with Jack's own racing pulse. He knew they were close. As they entered the cavern, the air grew colder. The walls of the cave were covered in strange, glowing symbols, their meanings lost to time. But the more Jack stared at them, the more he felt a strange connection, as though the symbols were somehow speaking to him, their energies weaving through his mind. He could almost see the story they told, of a civilization once proud and mighty, but now reduced to ashes. Their people had sought to control something ancient, something so powerful that it had consumed them all. The center of the cavern was dominated by a massive, ancient structure, part monolithic pillar, part mechanical construct. It pulsed with energy, dark veins of light tracing through its surface, flickering like dying stars. It was the source of the signal, that much was certain. And Jack could feel its power coursing through the very ground beneath his feet. "It's here," Jack whispered, his voice hoarse with awe and fear. Lara stepped forward, her eyes narrowing as she took in the structure. "What is it?" "It looks like some kind of prison." "It's more than that," Jack said, his voice distant, almost as if he were speaking to himself. "This is where they sealed it away. The Force. The thing that destroyed them." The symbols on the walls of the cavern seemed to pulse in time with the energy of the structure, their meaning becoming clearer to Jack with each passing moment. The civilization that had once lived here had tried to contain an unimaginable power. They had failed. And now, it was trying to break free again. Lara turned to the group, her expression grim. "We need to find a way to stop it. If we don't, everything we've fought for, everything we've survived, will be for nothing." Mara stepped forward, her voice resolute. "Let's do this. We've come this far. We're not turning back now." Jack nodded, his mind already racing with ideas. The structure was ancient, older than anything he had ever seen, but its technology, there was something familiar about it. His enhanced perception was reaching out, trying to connect with it, to understand it. But it was like trying to hold on to smoke, slipping through his fingers. "I need to get closer," Jack said, stepping forward. "I can feel it. The Force is tied to this structure. If I can just—" Before he could finish, the ground beneath them shook violently. A deep, guttural roar echoed through the cavern, shaking the very walls. The pulsing energy of the structure flared, its light growing blindingly bright. "Get back!" Lara shouted, reaching out to pull Jack away from the structure. "It's waking up." But it was too late. The moment Jack's hand touched the ancient surface, a wave of energy surged through him, flooding his mind with images, emotions, and sensations beyond anything he had ever experienced. He saw the civilization's final moments, desperation, fear, and the unmistakable scent of death. And at the center of it all, a creature, no, an entity, its form impossible to comprehend, a swirling mass of darkness and raw, unbridled power. It had been sealed away by the ancients, but now it was breaking free. It was alive, and it was angry. Jack's mind was overwhelmed by the force of it. He staggered backward, his breath coming in shallow gasps as the images faded, leaving him with only a raw, aching fear. The creature, the entity, it was not a single being. It was a presence. It could be anywhere, at any time. It was a storm that consumed everything in its path. "We need to get out of here," Mara growled, her voice filled with panic. "It's too late." Jack felt the presence pressing in on him, as if the entire cavern was alive, its walls closing in around him. He could hear the creature's voice now, a low, resonant hum vibrating through his bones. It was calling to him, seeking to corrupt him, to make him part of its eternal hunger. "No!" Jack shouted, forcing himself to focus. He clenched his fists, fighting the overwhelming force. "We can't let it win." With every ounce of willpower, Jack reached out again, this time focusing not on the entity, but on the structure. He could feel its vibrations, the ancient mechanisms that had once sealed the creature away. It was weakening, breaking down. "Help me!" Jack cried out, his voice strained. "We need to reinforce the seals." Lara rushed forward, her hands glowing with energy as she connected with the structure. Mara and Celine joined her, their weapons at the ready, but their focus on helping Jack hold the force at bay. Together, they pushed back against the growing darkness. It wasn't easy. The entity fought back with every ounce of its power, a relentless tide of destruction and chaos. But Jack's gift, his connection to the energy of the universe, gave him the edge. Slowly, painfully, the structure began to hum with power again, the ancient seals strengthening. But the presence, the creature, was not giving up. It was only waiting for the next opportunity. "Jack!" Lara gasped, her energy draining. "We can't hold it much longer." Jack's heart pounded in his chest, but his resolve only strengthened. "We can't stop here. We can't let it out again." With a final surge of energy, Jack pushed the creature back, forcing it into the depths of the ancient prison once more. The ground trembled, and the light from the structure flickered, but slowly, the pulsations died down. For a moment, silence reigned. Then, with a sudden shock, the entire cavern began to collapse around them. "Time to go!" Mara shouted, grabbing Jack's arm. "Now!" They ran, the walls of the cavern crumbling behind them, the sound of the creature's final roar echoing in their minds. As the sable horizon lifted off from the planet's surface, Jack looked out at the stars once more, his mind heavy with the knowledge that the battle was far from over. The universe was vast, and its secrets darker than he had ever imagined. But now, with his gift, his crew, and his determination, Jack knew they could face whatever came next. For humanity, for the universe, they would never stop fighting.